think we're ready to get started. So welcome everyone who's joining us live and by recorded video to this month's Let's Talk Solutions, focusing on managing your Foundation Cloud community portal. A couple of housekeeping items. We will be recording today's presentation, and you'll be able to find this and previous recordings on NPAC's knowledge base. Also, if you have any questions during the presentation, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We have team members monitoring your questions, and we'll make time at the end to discuss some of them if needed. Today, you'll be hearing from Jill Byrne, our Senior Solutions Engineer, also known as Innovation Manager, and also the Jill of all trades, so who will be doing our training today. So let's take a quick look at the agenda. Today, we hope to focus on managing your community portal and your users, the overall menu items, admin features, and how to edit and tailor your own help content, as well as publishing and managing your reports and documents. So with that, I'm going to hand this off to Jill. Take it away, Jill.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. Very happy to have you here today, and we're going to dive in mostly in the portal as Amy just went over the agenda. And this to remind you, use that Q&A to ask questions, and we'll get those answered as we go along. So let me share my screen. All righty, so hopefully you're all seeing my version of the portal, which is for demonstration purposes. Of course, yours is probably going to look a little different. As you guys well know, part of your implementation is skinning and personalizing the portal to fit within your online presence. And so what we're starting with today is the registration experience. And so you're able to configure this landing page, this login screen, to show and support the various types of roles that you make available for your supporters to be able to register for. And so that registration page, of course, that's something that you're able to configure and determine things such as if it's required to accept terms and conditions. Terms and conditions are things that you can personalize and add text and context there. The variety of different roles. Now, again, for demonstration purposes, I kind of have all the bells and whistles opened up and available so that you guys can see all the capabilities and possibilities that we have. Part of your tailoring of the system is determining which roles to surface and make available for your supporters to be able to register for. One thing I wanted to point out is that you can choose to make some of these roles auto accept. So I find that sometimes that's not overly clear. So let's dive in. Now I've just logged into the portal as an admin. So again, this is going to kind of open up all the doors and show us everything. Under this site admin, we're going to spend a lot of time in this area today. If I go into those roles and menus, this is the interaction with the various roles. You can rename these and call them something that is relevant to your organization and the various nouns and verbs that you use within your four walls. So for example, that donor role, I call it the fund holder or / donor role. You might have it named something completely different at your organization. You're also able to create user-defined roles. You're probably noticing that up at the top. User-defined roles take the base roles of that donor or fund advisor role, the board member, and then the site admin. Those roles, you can tailor those even further and create your own subsets or child roles based off of those base. Other things that you can do are including, and I'm thinking of any of you out there that might be processing scholarships, during your scholarship season, I'm sure it's quite active. And so when I crack this open, notice that you have the ability to make this role be auto approved. So that default status there, that means when someone registers for this role, what am I going to do? Am I going to put that in a pending status? And that means someone in the office has to review and approve that. And we're going to look at that in just a few moments. Or you can change it to be approved. And what that means is when someone applies, or in other words, sets up, fills out the registration page and is indicating that they are going to come into the portal as a scholarship applicant, it just automatically grants them access and they get right on in. So they can go start applying for scholarships. So that's the big difference between those two options, and might be appropriate for certain roles that you have at the organization if you don't need someone to look at those. And then active, this checkbox is the one that's going to surface that role as something for someone to be able to register for. So if you're seeing roles, these various personas that I have in my system, and you're thinking, wait a minute, we don't see those when on our registration page, you might want to just review which ones you have activated. There are some little bits of summaries out here, so you don't have to necessarily open every single one of them, such as, is it even going to be available at sign up? Does it require someone to add an address? Do they have to put in the name of their organization? So there's a little tidbits of information about those roles right here from the list. And you can also see whether or not those roles are active and there for folks to be able to register for. So that's just kind of a quick sneak peek into some of those various types of choices. Now, by opening up the menu, this is really where a lot of you probably dig into, be able to identify the various pages or menu options that appear. Again, for demonstration purposes, I kind of have all the various features and functions opened up. But inside of your organization, some of these might not make sense, or you might not want to surface some of those. To do that, by opening the menu, it's simply just a click of a box. So if there's something inside of the feature set that you do not want to make available to the users that have that role, just deselect this box. And it's that easy. Hopefully you also noticed while I was in there that you also have the ability to relabel. We get a lot of questions around that. So on the back end, what comes with the portal and the various names and labels, you have the ability to tailor those. Call it something different, whatever is part of the nomenclature within your organization, and that makes more sense, just relabel it, call it something different. Lots of varieties of ways to relabel throughout the portal. And the last thing I'll talk about while I'm here on these various roles is one of the kind of, I think, little known roles or underutilized roles is this fund admin role. The fund admin is meant for your organization. This isn't your constituents, not your supporters, but rather an internal role. And so what does this allow? It allows you to be able to have access to all of the donor funds, all of the funds. So just thinking of, you might have someone call in, one of your fund holders, fund advisors might call in and say, hey, I'm on the portal, I'm looking at my fund, I'm not understanding what I'm seeing. So how can you best support them? That fund, what that role of allows you, so let's go into this fund summary. And I'm in as an admin, and I have that role that fund admin role. So what that enables is, notice here for fund, I've got a button. And if I choose that, it's now opening up a search option that's going to allow me to pull in or search across all the funds, which of course your fund holder doesn't have the ability to do. He's only associated to just one fund. So they're just going to look at that, through the lens of that one or two or a couple of funds. But when you are supporting them and you want to see exactly what they're looking at, you can come in here and maybe pull up their fund. And then now I'm looking through the eyes of that fund advisor and their specific fund, and I can see the things that they're seeing on their fund statement, exactly how they're seeing it, and be able to hopefully answer their questions. So again, that's the fund admin role. It does have to be applied after giving yourself the donor role. So let's go back in and I'll finish kind of how you set that up real quick. So what I'm mentioning is this donor role, which again is usually the one that's associated with fund advisors / fund holders. You have to have that role as an administrator, and then you can add to it that fund admin role, and then it'll open up all the funds for you. And again, we recommend that that only be applied to administrators of the system. Okay, so let's move on to that registration. So once we have someone register for the portal, they're going to receive an email. So the emails, the email messages within the portal are automatically generated, and that's all based on a variety of actions. And so when someone is registering for the portal, they're going to receive a welcome message, kind of letting them know, thank you for registering, and give them a little information. You can configure that and so forth. And then once they have that that registration, what happens in the back end, so to speak, is your alert if your user role in the grant system. So now we're in Foundation Cloud Grants. If your user role inside of this system allows you to process web users, you're going to receive an alert letting you know that someone is registered. And then that registration, of course, happens within the processing queue. And so let's process. I kind of set up a fake user here so that we could demonstrate processing. So this is my new user who's registered on the portal. It gives me all of their information. I kept it kind of simple, just a name and an email address. Requiring addresses, of course, that's something you can activate and enforce. The first thing that you want to do is we need to look and see if by chance this web user happens to also be inside of our existing CRM. It's giving me some suggestions, but it's not really matching. So we can with confidence say, let's go ahead and create that new constituent record. And we'll give him his email address that he indicated. And other information. And since he did register as an advisor, a fund advisor, I'll go ahead and activate that type for him. The nice thing is when this action is performed, and that went pretty quickly, not only did it create a record within the configured, the integrated CRM, but it also is going to automatically create that link, which is awesome. I'm a huge fan of efficiencies, and some of you have heard me say the, think think, work smart, not hard. And what I've done right there is I've created that constituent record, created a constituent record here in the grant system, and then it just automatically tied them together. So in other words, I didn't have to do two different things. I did one thing and we got everything accomplished all at once. Let's go ahead and also approve his request to be added to the portal. We're going to process him all the way through here. And then now we're being asked again, hey, do you want to send an email notifying them of these updates? Sure, go ahead. We'll go ahead and send them another update. And we've got our new portal user. So we'll go ahead and send that out to him and welcome him to the portal. So again, at this point, we have processed that record. So let's go take a look at Eli's record, and we'll be able to see that not only has he been linked to his constituent record in the CRM, but he's also been added as a web user, and all of the information that we need there to help support him. If we need to resend his email or his username and password, we could do that too. Let's go back into that portal processing queue. And this is also where you can show all your web users. So for my Classic users out there, this is the equivalent of the same thing in Classic, where you can pull up a list of all your web users, which I've just activated. So now this is a list. I've got 96. So there's my web count, or excuse me, my record count of out of all my constituents that are in the grant system. I've got 96 of them that are listed here that I can have as candidates for web users. Let's say you have some fund advisors that are new in the system. Maybe they haven't come through the portal and you want to be proactive and go ahead and set them up and send them out an email with their username and password. As we know, sometimes our fund holders can be a little burdened by doing those kind of registration activities. So, hey, let's do it for them. So what's a quick way that we can find our fund holders who have not registered? So I brought up my list of all of my my web users, and from here I'm going to choose my advisor, and it's showing me a list of, down here, all my constituent records that have that type of advisor but have not been set up as web users. And so this gives us an opportunity to set them up and send them out an email with that information in it. Let's go ahead and we're going to pick on Caitlin here and add her. Now, of course, you can do more than one. You don't have to do these one at a time. You can do multiple at the same time. So we're going to add her, let's see, into that advisor role. And so we're going to get a few dialog boxes here that are kind of confirming as we step through this process. So we've got our one web user record. We're adding her to that fund holder, fund advisor role. Sounds great. Let's go ahead and go forward. Then it's going to confirm that we have accomplished those things. And now we can go ahead and visit her. Let's go to Caitlin's record. I think she was, there we go. I forgot there was an I there. All right, so here is her constituent record here in the grant system, and it's this web user right here that we just set up. So in other words, prior to this, this tile wasn't here. So we've set up Caitlin as a web user, and we want to send her that email. We want to let her know, hey, we've set you up. So let's go ahead and First, we're going to create a temporary password for her. And save that. And then we can go on down into our correspondence area. And I have a template that's already created. For anyone that might be new to the system, we've got past Let's Talk Solutions sessions where we've dived really deep into how to create communication templates. So definitely, if that's new for you, seek out those recordings of the past LTSs and take a look at those on communications. So I already have one that's called New Portal Users. And I'm going to go ahead and create that. Again, your template might look completely different. Mine's pretty simple, but you're of course going to want to say things like, hey, you've been added to the portal. Here's maybe include a link to the portal. This is a template, so it's auto-populating some of this information, such as that temporary password, and then also the email address and her name, and then also a link to our giving area. In case they feel so inspired, they want to make a donation. And so we can send this out and invite them to come use the portal. So before I move on to the next subject on our agenda, I want to pause there and ask my colleagues if we have any questions that we want to answer, or anything that you guys want to add to any of this I've said so far.
We do have a couple questions, Jill. Can you add what role and status they are into on the all web user list in Foundation Cloud grants, such as the fund admin approved versus applicant denied?
Great question, Amy. This is Jeff Armstrong. I just went and took a look. I saw Mike Dawson had put that into the chat. Thanks for bringing that up, Mike. I went and looked, and sure enough, in the column chooser, I don't see the role as one of the options. And I don't know if it's available for other foundations or not, but I'd strongly encourage you to go out to User Voice and submit a feature request there. And that's something that our engineering team could get to pretty quickly.
Great, thanks, Jeff.
Yep, you bet. I'll put a link in the chat.
Great. The next one is from Allison. When you create a record in RE/NXT through your system, you can't get a constituent code or fund connections. You will still need to go into the RE database view to make connections in the system. Is that correct?
That was a lot of words. Okay, so wait. So I know
Let me read it again.
Fund linking.
When you create the record, when you create the record in RE through your system, you can't set the constituent code or fund connections. You still need to go into the RE database view to make the connections in the system. Is that correct? Can you do it within Foundation Cloud?
Is it to the fund they're asking about? I'm trying to clarify connections to what.
Yeah,
I think we can answer both. So in the portal processing queue, when you're creating a new constituent in the CRM system in Raiser's Edge, it will create the appropriate constituent code for, if it's a fund advisor or if it's a student for a scholarship applicant, et cetera. So it'll set that constituent code properly. But if it's a fund advisor, then you're correct. You will have to go into the Raiser's Edge database view in order to set up that relationship to the fund.
Right. And that's what I was trying to clarify. Yeah, like as far as the constituent record, that all got set up and everything's linked. But when it comes to creating a link to their fund, yes, you are going to have to specifically within Raiser's Edge if that's your CRM. And that right now is only available in their classic view, their admin view. You'll have to add the fund linkage. Yes.
On Raiser's Edge.
On Raiser's Edge. Yeah.
Great. There was another one from Allison. Do the emails get logged in the constituent account somewhere?
Yes. So under this documents tile, that's where all your correspondence history will show up. So when I send this out of FCG, such as that example I was given a moment ago, then it would show up down here listed.
Great. There's another one that Jeff already answered, but we'll list it here. just for everyone. They were asking about, is the constituent record created immediately or does the system need to sync overnight? And Jeff did answer that, and it is immediate.
Immediately. Yeah, I don't think Caitlin's wasn't the one that I created. Hers was just the one that we gave access to. Elijah's is the one that I just created here on the fly. So here's the record that literally just got created during this session, and you guys were watching me do that live. It did it instantly. And that's why I was saying, like, as an efficiency thing, that's one that really gets me excited, because as I'm processing him for registering on the portal, and prior to that, Eli did not have a record in any system. And so by processing him through the portal queue, he got a record out here in the CRM, and he got a record here in the grant system. And in both cases, they were both created at exactly the same time. And it creates that link.
Great, thanks, Jill. One more question before you pick
Sure.
back up again. In the first part of the webinar, you were showing how to configure roles in the portal. How do you navigate to that screen from GE? Can you see that screen from GE, or do you need to be an admin to access that?
So I'm on the portal for that. You do have to be an administrator in the portal in order to get to these. Where I was at was this roles and menus option under the site admin. So you do have to be a portal site admin. So in other words, no, it's not configured in the grant system.
Thank you.
Good question. All right, so with our agenda, our next area, that's actually a great segue. Thank you, whoever asked that question, because our next section for our time together today is we're going to dive into some of these. Let me scroll up a little bit here. Some of these options that we're seeing under here for site admin. So to help with this, hopefully you guys are aware that out and are actively engaging with our KBAs, our knowledge base out here. And there is a knowledge base article that is all about the administrative features within the portal. We give a lot of good tips and tricks out here on how to manage certain things. How do I configure the tiles? How do I get those email templates all set up? Maybe you want to change the instructions that appear. Lots of great tips within this FAQ document related to the portal. And so be sure to visit the knowledge base. There's also really good information about maybe somebody's accidentally locked themselves out. That happens. And so they're getting a hold of you and saying, hey, I've accidentally used the wrong password too many times. So how do you support them and unlock them? And then a lot of you are aware that just recently we rolled out multi-factor authentication. And so how do you best support your portal users with MFA and guide them through how to set that up? And just as a reminder, this week, we now have pretty much made it mandatory. So make sure that you're accessing our KBA, our knowledge base article repository for lots of really good information about using the portal. With that said, let's talk about a few of those things that are mentioned within that article, such as configuring the emails. What I really like about this is, let's go into the grant request one. So in other words, that is the email sent to the donor if they request a grant or interfund transfer. This is, of course, just a confirmation, but the message that's seen here is completely flexible. You have control over how you want this to look and feel. And so if you want to insert pictures, if you want to add links to other areas, you'll use this interactive editor up here at the top and to add things such as pictures, images. If you want to insert some links that go to other areas, you can do that also. Little linky icon there. What you're seeing over here on the right side are the available fields that you can use to construct your message. So these are the insert fields. You kind of just crack these open and you can see a little information below. But it's merely just dragging and dropping and plopping that right into the message. Oh, be sure you know where your cursor is at, as you just saw me do that. I sometimes forget that tip myself. Make sure you got your cursor where you want it to be, and then drop that insert field straight on in to that message. Mine are kind of basic for demonstrating, but you can preview those if you want to see how it looks without it being inside of that editor. You can also send yourself a test message. So again, if you want to see how that's going to look when it's sent and ready to go, you can send it to yourself and get a little taste of that. So make sure you're going in and configuring those and getting the most out of your email editor and so forth. I'd say the next probably most frequently visited area is the page settings. So the page settings or the pages are the various different screens that the roles are going to see. So here's my fund advisor role and all the various features or pages that they can visit. And here under this drop-down menu, we're going to see kind of presented the same thing. These are all the various roles. So if I choose that fund advisor role there, now I'll see all those various pages. Again, those are just the screens that are going to be presented to that role. So if we go into that fund summary, for example, I often think of the instructions as really your opportunity to personalize the page and be able to add certain things like email addresses. In this case, you know, they're on their fund summary. And sometimes I have to just kind of, you know, think of what the experience is like for that fund holder, for that fund advisor. So they navigate into their fund summary. What is the information that we want to tell them? And all of the narrative that you're seeing here, you have complete control over. So kind of tell the story to them or think of things that might be helpful for them that they'd like to see on that screen. And you can also embed email addresses. And so in this case, if they do have questions, they can click on that on the screen and it's going to open up their email and auto-populate that address in there for them so they can reach out and ask questions. You also have the ability to insert links. Such as if you have other pages, other internet pages that, you know, if they want to see further information and you've got that somewhere else on your website, you can add that link there. The other nice thing about links is it also can include things not only as that email, but it can also include phone numbers. And so as you guys know, a lot of times the portal users are on devices, they're on phones. And so if you put in a phone number and link it, that's going to make it so that if they happen to be on their phone, they can just touch that phone number and make that call super easy, as it'll be interactive in that way. And so as you know that sometimes the fund holders, we've got to give them a little extra support. And so that gives us the ability to, embed those types of things right into the screen that they're visiting. So page settings is definitely an area that I'm sure a lot of you are visiting pretty frequently as you're configuring and tailoring the portal to fit their needs. So let's go in as my fund holder real quick. And as you can see that fund summary, there's those instructions we were just looking at. And then there's that embedded email address where they can simply click on that and it'll auto-populate an email message for them to be able to send. So these narratives on the pages, so if I go into grant history, same concept, we have opportunity to change the verbiage that we're seeing on these screens. Again, if you want to give them a little more help, more information about your various opportunities and programs. And so as we kind of navigate around, hopefully you're noticing, here's our grant recommendation. This narrative here, along with the impact logo, all of this I added through those page settings, including embedding a file. So again, thinking of how can we best support our constituents, I added, maybe they need a little more instructions when they're walking through this grant recommendation. Some things that are optional, not only can you embed documents, and as hopefully you're noticing in that lower left corner down in here, the web, what's showing there is it's going to open up a PDF. And this is actually just a copy of a presentation, but you would probably have actual instructions there. And then they also, again, they can hop into an email. The other option is to go in and embellish and augment the help. And we're going to talk about that in just a few moments. So lots of different ways to support the portal users by embedding things, adding links, and so forth. Next, let's dive into the tiles, because that's another area that I often get questions about. The tiles are what show up on the home pages, or in my case, I've relabeled that and I call them dashboards. The home pages for the various roles include things such as these various information tiles. The users themselves have a little bit of light tailoring they can do by rearranging these and moving them around. But you really control how these information tiles appear, including the labels and which ones should appear. And so let's pop back into that tile area here. Those various home pages are all listed for those different personas. So if we go into that fund holder or donor, now we're seeing those tiles, and over here on the left, or excuse me, right, you can see which ones I've got active and which ones I'm hiding. You also have control over the order. So you just watched me kind of rearrange it. Of course, the fund holders, they can do that, rearrange it. But at any time, if you were to choose this reset tile user settings, you're essentially, you can put it back into the default sort order. So you can kind of control that if you need to reset it. And then another common area are the grid settings. So before I jump into that, actually, let's go look at a grid. So the grant history screen, that's an example of a grid. So these data grids that you see down here, you have control over the labels, so the column headers. You have control over which ones they can pull in to show, which columns to show. And you also have control over information that's seen there. And so let's go into those grid settings, whoops, fell off there. And take a look at the various types of grids. Again, they're kind of peppered all throughout the experience. And so if we will go into that grant history, the one we were just on, it's showing here the various possibilities, the database column name, but then this heading is going to be what they see. And then, is it turned on? Do we want it to be visible? Do we want to allow sorting? And then in what order should it be? These are all configurable, and you have the ability to change that around, such as should it be enabled? Should it be visible? How wide should that column be? Here's where you can relabel the column header. Lots of great information inside of here, and including whether they can filter on that. A lot of good information about how you can control those various types of settings. And then the last one I'll highlight before we move on to our last couple of areas here also includes the investment options. Another question I get quite a lot is, how do we control the various investment options to the fund holders, the funds? So we're talking about this investment strategies and how we control what they see and what is presented to them for the various investment options. So how all of this is configured is within those investment options. We can go into the strategies. I have a handful of different strategies just so that I can show off various different types of capabilities. You might not have quite as many, but from here is where you can add and edit. We go back to those options. You're probably noticing some of them are linked. So how do we do that? Let's crack one of these open and notice that you can embed a URL. Mine just clicks again for demonstration, so it goes somewhere. I've got to go into Google, but let's see. I think I've got the Thrivent one too. Yeah. So like in this case, that's actually going to take them to the Thrivent funds page online, and they can investigate that mutual fund a little closer. So those are where you can visit your investment options. And while we're here, let's also dive into the next area and talk about how to manage the help topics. But before I do that, before we move on to that next subject, I'll open it up. And Amy, do we have any questions that we want to mention or anything that I can share?
We're good.
Okay, that was to get you to say something so I could take a quick drink. Alrighty, so let's talk about help topics. The help topics, of course, we provide really great help articles that are already baked right into the system. But you guys know your supporters the best, and maybe they need a little more helping hand, or you'd like to throw in some custom content that's specific to your portal and your organization. So what you want to start with is the help topic from within this drop-down list. So it's quite lengthy, it's pretty long, but we kind of give you guys keys to these kingdoms because again, you know your supporters the best. So let's go to the docket here. That would be, of course, for my board member when they visit this dockets page and they open up the help article when they get there. What you'll see here is the default help, which of course is the baked in, what we here at Impact have already authored for you. But you can add some custom content. And to do that, I just hit that edit button. It's going to pull up our HTML editor here. Now, rather than starting from scratch, which is what it's presented to me, just a blank sheet, you can bring in the default help. In other words, maybe there's part of the help article that is applicable and we want to use some of this, but maybe just tailor it, edit it a little further. So go ahead and drop the default help in there. And then you can go in and make all of your changes. This is the same HTML editor you've seen now a handful of times. For example, if I want to drop in some graphics, I can do that. If I want to embed some links, so maybe there's additional information you want to supply to them that might be in a PDF or in a Word document, you can drop that right on in there and link to that document. I just have to say I see that one used quite frequently. You saw that earlier where I had a PDF document linked on the page. Same concept, I can link to it within this help article too. So hopefully if you're not utilizing that today, that this has inspired you to maybe beef up that help for your fund holders and your various portal users. Because again, all the articles that appear to the various personas are available for you to edit. So the last item as we wrap up our time together today is talking about reports and files. So let's dive into those areas. Let's start with reports. So the reports under the site admin area is your ability to see which reports have we surfaced for the various roles in the system. And for our fund advisors, looks like we've got a handful of reports for them that we've surfaced. If I want to see board member, we've got some docket reports that we've surfaced for them. But how do I do that? How did I get those reports to appear? In the grant system, so now we're in Foundation Cloud Grants. Right now, the paginated reports are the ones that we can surface out on the portal. Coming soon will be the Power BI reports. So for now, you can surface your paginated, the kind of the classic reports out there. And what it's asking me here is if I want to make it a web report, it's merely just a click of a box. And then you get to decide who gets to see this report. And so which role, which persona should this report be visible for. And so that's kind of just simplified there, how to deploy reports out to the portal. And then lastly, let's go into the file manager, which is how do we surface files, documents to the various portal users. Now, right now, you are only able to provide documents, use the file manager for the donors / fund holder role. The fund viewer, so my fund holder, they've got documents. My fund viewer, they have documents. And then my board member, they have documents. So let's go out to our board member real quick, as those are the documents that they're seeing there. I'm actually going to log out because I'm in as an administrator. I want to go in as my board member, and I've got kind of a persona specific login. And now we're seeing the roles, functions, and features that I've surfaced for my board member. And so we have two different documents that we've added for them. The general are just documents that anyone, any of those three, the fund holders, the fund viewer, or the board member are going to see. That's the general. The one that you're seeing there that says board members and meeting minutes, that one I've specifically set up to only allow my board members to see. So now I'm going to sign back in with my administrative login. And let's see how that happens. Under our site admin, that's going to be under file manager. Oh, and by the way, before I get too far ahead of myself, I want to mention that we also have this out on the, earlier I was mentioning our knowledge base. And there's an article all about file manager and how to configure it. And there it is right there about which roles, which personas you can supply files to, how you set that up, how you add folders, how you add documents, and then how I'm making them available for download. But what I really want you to, let's see in here, this section right here. This is probably the most commonly asked questions because you can make files specific to users like the donor or the board member, like I was just talking about, but you can also make them specific to funds. And so let's pop back in here real quick. And I want to show you what that fund one looks like, because hopefully, I know that went kind of fast. Whoops, not that one. I know that went kind of fast, but by naming the file, the name of the fund, that's what's making this one specific to that fund. So it's all, the magic is all in the naming convention. So what I'm getting at is when I go into this fund summary, or excuse me, when I go into my documents, and let's switch this now to Hugo, you're going to see a whole different document show up. So that fund statement is associated with this fund because of its naming convention. And so the magic to all of that, the secret sauce, definitely read this KBA because it explains how to set all that up. So before we run out of time, let me pop back in real quick to that file manager. And there's that board member. Again, the general documents are going to show up to everybody. But in my case, I wanted to put some meeting minutes specific for my board members only to see. And how I did that was created, created a subfolder under the board member, because remember, we've got 3 roles that can see these, and that board member is one of those. So I created a subfolder named meeting minutes and then added this file to it and made that available for them. Do notice that you can also add zipped files. So if there are more than one, there's more than one file that you want to add, you don't have to do that one at a time. You can, in bulk, add files and make these available to the portal users. So that brings us to the end of our content. I'm going to pause here, open it up. Any last questions, comments?
I will. Jeff has been great in catching the questions and answering them, but there was one recently that might be good to revisit, and that's are all the changes made to the tiles and the pages, are they live as soon as you make them?
Great question. Yes, they are. So as soon as you make a change, whether that's in the page settings, the tabs, the tiles, the grids, all of that is going to reflect instantly. Good question.
I think that's it on questions. We'll keep an eye open for any others.
Okay. Well, thank you guys so much for joining.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Please mark your calendars for June 21st for our next Let's Talk Solutions. And just a reminder, if you have topics you'd like to see, please shoot me an email. Let me know. if you come up with something. And here's our contact information on your screen, as well as if you haven't responded to the customer satisfaction survey, please remember to fill that out. We are gathering those responses. And I believe that's all we have. So I want to thank you all for coming today. Mark your calendars, and we will see you on June 21st for the next Let's Talk Solutions. Thanks all.